That, of course, is the great Paul McCartney.
Welcome to Expert Minutes. I'm John Hambone McGuire.
This conversation
Sweet, juicy. Where did that word come from?
I don't know.
Bet you never thought you'd hear that on the radio.
Welcome to Podcast Radio. I'm Graham Mack, and I host the Pod 20 every Friday, 5 p.m. on Podcast Radio, and I count down the top 20 podcasts in the world. And I also get to talk to some of the podcasters that present the world's best podcasts. And one of them is Dan Benedictus. How are you, Dan? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Let's see if I can get your name up there. There we go. I've got your name on there and everything. So your podcast is called Desert Island Dicks.
That's right. Yeah, so people choose the worst people and things to be stuck on a desert island with.
Great idea. How long's it been going?
I think in October it'll be about 5 years. So,
Wow.
yeah, a little while now. But I mean, I've actually only hosted it for about half of that time. So it was started by my good friend James Deacon. We used to work together and we sat next to each other, and he's one of those sort of people who's always just come out with ideas all the time, and he wanted to do a podcast, and he was like, Dan, what about this one? And I'd be like, yeah, that's okay, you know, we sort of workshop it a bit. And then he came up with Desert Island Dicks, and I was like, that's the one, like, do that, that's the one that I want to hear. And he kept coming up with more ideas, and I was saying, James, stop it, like, that's the one you've got to do, I want to hear that, make it happen. And so we sort of chatted about it for ages, and I kind of badgered him about it for about a month. And then eventually he interviewed me as the first guest.
Right.
And then, yeah, I mean, it became my favorite podcast, basically. And then after a couple of years, I think, you know, just other pressures of work and things, he was thinking of sort of jacking it in. I was like, no, come on, it's great. I love it. And he built it up from you know, just from people like me in the office chatting with him to sort of getting some really good guests on, and it just seemed such a shame. And then I used to jokingly say to him, if we were drunk, I'd say, like, oh, listen, don't worry, you know, if you were to die, I'll look after it for you, you know. And then so yeah, he just sort of said, oh, actually, I think you should take over. So yeah, I started just before the pandemic started. I did about 3 recordings in person, and then since then they've all been pretty much over Zoom and stuff.
Yeah, they are good. So what was the work you were doing when you were working with James?
We're both radio producers by trade, so yeah, I
Where
still am. Absolute Radio.
Okay. So do you know
Yeah.
Richie Firth?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
I've been there about.
I worked with Richie a couple of times. It was his first radio job at 2CR in Bournemouth. I worked with him. And then I went back there a few years later and was the program director and worked with Richie. And
Okay.
Martin Lee was on the show as well. Do you know Martin?
Yeah, I know Martin well. Yeah.
That's it. Martin's out of radio now. Well, I think he's doing podcasts and stuff, so he still keeps a hand in. Right.
Yeah,
So why
yeah.
didn't you do it as something through Absolute then?
I think, I mean, I don't know. I think we sort of wanted to just do an independent thing, and I think probably the nature of it being a bit sweary and a bit cheeky, you know, it's just sort of easier to just start it off, you know, not under the umbrella of anything work related, really. I don't think at the time they were really looking for any a podcast like that to do. You know, they do now. They sort of broaden their range and stuff like that. So. Yeah, we just sort of did it alone, really, and just sort of built it up there. I mean, James still helps produce it, so we still search for guests together, and he sort of deals with the overall strategy for the things, and so, you know, he's still very much part of it. And we sort of joke, we're like, oh yeah, we like the DIY ethos, you know, so it's a bit more punk rock. So,
well, one of the things I like about podcasting is it is kind of the punk version of broadcasting. You know, a lot of the rules of radio are just thrown out the window, and it makes it a lot nicer and a lot more natural and a lot. You know, I was talking to somebody about this on this podcast not that long ago. So someone who was a radio broadcaster turned podcaster, and it's just that, you know, a lot of broadcasting, because there's a format clock and there are certain benchmarks you have to get in, like the news at the top of the hour and the commercials have to go at a certain time. Sometimes items that could go further are cut short. Whereas in podcasting, things are given the air that they need. They're given the amount of time that they need, once you get onto a topic.
Yeah.
And also in radio, sometimes somebody's trying to get to one of those benchmarks and something hasn't got the legs and it'll get dragged out. I mean, that really only happens in speech radio, but sometimes stuff that hasn't got the legs gets dragged out, and stuff that just hasn't got, that's got more to it gets cut down. But in podcasting, things seem to reach their natural length, which I think is something that's way better than radio about podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I enjoy about it. I mean, I started out wanting to be a radio presenter. That was sort of my dream for most of my life. And, I did this sort of normal thing of, I did my work experience. I was a receptionist, then I was a runner. I've worked in the same building for about almost 15 years, just doing all these different jobs. And then, I was given the opportunity to do a bit of radio presenting. And I just, when it came to it, I just wasn't very good at it. It wasn't really, I was used to rambling and playing what I wanted and sort of I'm not very, I stop and start and stutter a bit, and I'm not that fluid with things, and I sort of repeat myself, and I'm not as good at those sort of tight links that people do. And also I'm not very good at pretending to be passionate about music I don't like, because, I love music, but I'm, I love dancing, but I'm not one of those people who can just dance to anything, or like listen to anything, as long as it's on. Like, if I'm listening to the radio and I don't like it, I just turn it off. And so for people like me, it's great so not having those rules and restrictions. And I just feel, especially being an independent one, I'm just more relaxed. And that's the key, if you're going to be a radio presenter, it's like being comfortable with yourself, being relaxed in the job you're doing. And so, with this podcast, I think I can be. So I'm truer to who I am. Rather, I think on radio I was always just trying to be who I thought they wanted me or expected me to be, and then no one really wins, because they don't get your personality and you're not getting yourself out there, and you're feeling sort of like you're doing an impression of a radio presenter or something. So, So
plus podcasting is cool, and radio is about the uncoolest thing there is right now, and music radio in particular, because they've done their best to suck all the personality and all the fun out of it and turned it into a science. I mean, Absolute is probably less guilty of that than a lot of stations, but still, they have the rules and the formats just like everybody else. Yeah. But podcasting is the cool place to be right now.
Yeah, obviously, I sort of said to myself before I come on, I wasn't going to admit who I worked for, and I sort of forgot that. So now I'm going to have to be really careful.
Okay. Okay. Well, I asked you, didn't have to tell. I didn't know that. Yeah.
No, I know that was me. This is the thing. I'm not very. I'm an oversharer, I think. But yeah, I think, radio's sort of got its traditions and its sort of way of doing things, and I think, like anyone or any sort of organization that's done things in a similar way for a long time, it's easy to sort of go, well, this is the way it's done. This is how radio works. And likewise, you can't always have, you couldn't have a rambling hour-long chat like you can with the podcast. So sometimes it's, it's not always the fault of radio, I suppose. You do. I suppose something like talk radio, you get sort of rambling hour-long chats. It's just like one person just talking into the ether, which I can't stand personally. But I suppose it's the sort of takeaway, portable nature of it that helps, with a podcast. I think with a radio, obviously, you can't just ramble on. You've got to keep people, and it's like, if you're DJing, at a party, it's not always just play whatever you want. It's like, oh, did you like that? Okay, well, here's some more of that then. Please don't go out for a cigarette. So I think they're slightly different beasts, but yeah, for me, I think it's a much better fit, and I feel more kind of comfortable being who I am, and it's just, it's more relaxed for me anyway.
I love the fact that the podcast came together almost organically, that your mate was just shouting out these different things and you were like reacting, but then there was the one that really moved you, so that's the one you went. It sounds like that scene from the Alan Partridge show where he's pitching all those ideas. I can't remember them all, but monkey tennis is the one that.
Yeah.
Was it like that?
A little bit, yeah, like youth hosteling with Chris Eubank. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think that's James's real strength as a producer. He can get an idea and just sort of see where it could go or add things to, or if I was to give him an idea, he'd sort of just go off and like think of loads of other things to do with that. And you know, I think working in a radio station, lots of people are creative in that way. And even after he came up with this idea, like I say, he just kept coming up with more and more and more. So yeah, and I think it was, I mean, like a lot of things in the media, the name came first, you know, so it's like, oh, that would be
It's so
you know, that's
important to
funny
have a
time.
good name. Desert Island
Yeah.
Dicks is a brilliant name. And I think radio people do that. We often, because now and again you'll be in a situation where a sales manager will come up to you and go like, I've got a client and he doesn't want to buy ads, he wants to buy a contest. Have you got a contest? And you go like, well, give us a bit more. What is he? Oh, he's a restaurant. Oh, okay, how about food or rude? And they go, oh, like it. How does that work? And you start making it up like you knew all along. Or what we do is we get an item off his menu, and it's either a French word, a French insult, rude, or it's a dish on the menu. We give just, you know, or we take some French, and that's the game. And they go, okay, great, I'll get back to him with that. And you go, there's another one. And I think radio people are like that. So I can see that's how it's gone, like Desert Island Dicks. And you get the name first, and then you've got to work out what the show's about.
Yeah, and I think it works because it's, you know, it's something that most people are familiar with, you know, because growing up in this country, Desert Island Discs has been such a feature for like the last sort of 80 odd years or something crazy. So, you know, most people just go, right, I get what that is. You know, there's no having to explain it. Which is obviously, you know, I used to do a podcast for years called The Slump, and it was just me and two friends talking nonsense, but there wasn't really a theme. It was sort of, you know, like my favorite thing in the world is just being with my friends and making each other laugh naturally, you know, so it was just that. And people who listened really liked it, but there was no elevator pitch for it because it was just me and my mates talking rubbish. With Desert Island Dicks, you're like, oh, right, I get what that is. You know, it's the opposite of Desert Island Discs. And so it's like a snappy thing. People understand it. I think it's also, you know, one of those things where, like Desert Island Discs, you know, I'd listen to that and I'd think, oh, what music would I choose? Or you've been a long car journey, you could speak to your wife going, oh, what would you pick? Oh, yeah, I don't know if I'd pick it. So it's a similar thing. I think podcasts sort of often they work quite well if it's like, you know, there's lots of food ones, like your ideal menu, that kind of thing. And all those that make you think, oh yeah, what would I choose? Like, it's sort of, you know, because then if someone picks something, you're like, yes, I was going to pick that. Oh, I can't believe you picked the Beatles. What? They're amazing, you know, which happens quite a lot. So that's always quite useful.
On Desert Island Dicks, people regularly pick the Beatles as something they don't want with them on a desert island.
Yeah, it's happened a few times actually. We've got.
Can you remember the names of the guests who went that way?
Do you know what? I've got a spreadsheet because one of our amazing listeners has actually made us a spreadsheet of all the choices ever. It might take me a while because I'm really not a favorite spreadsheet, so it always takes me a while to look them up. But hang on, let me have a look. People, food, song. Okay. So, well, I know Queen and the Beatles have actually been chosen 4 times each. So they're the most recurrent ones. It might take me a little bit
things
longer.
People don't want on a desert island. I find that, wow, that's shocking.
Well, we do. So we have so we do the 3 people you'd least want to be stuck with, and then your worst food, drink, song, film, and animal. And so in the music ones, Queen and the Beatles have come up the most. It doesn't. I mean, that's only 4 each over you know, a couple of hundred episodes, so it's not really that much. But I think sometimes it's people, because it's a format, it's quite easy to come on and just go, Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, Piers Morgan, you know, and there was a time where Piers Morgan was getting picked so often, I was almost sort of tempted to tell guests, like, you know, pick whoever you want, but he has been, you know, we're sort of running out of things to say about him now. But I think often guests sort of think, well, that's the obvious choice, I'm gonna go for the obvious one, I'm going with something a little bit different. And maybe some people, just the sort of the audacity of saying, like, you know, the band, like the most famous band in the world, they probably quite enjoy getting off their chest. So so I don't know. I mean, it's hard to, you know, I usually try and sort of go, okay, well, what can I think of to go along with you on this? But when it's something like that, it's really challenging, because you just think, I mean, challenging in inverted commas. I mean, it's not like a hard job, but I'm not saving lives. But I mean, it's trying to think of like, oh God, what can I say about the Beatles? I can't understand what there isn't to like. And they're not even my favorite band, but I just think they're really difficult to not enjoy. Whereas Queen, I like Queen, but I can see why people hate them as well. I can sort of understand why they annoy people, even though I like them. As the Beatles, I just think they've done no harm to anyone listening.
So can you remember what you picked when you were that first guest?
Yeah. So the people, and again, I think it's just what I was feeling on the day. I wouldn't necessarily pick them now, but I picked Davina McCall, Jason Statham, and Ed Sheeran.
I get them totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The food, I think, was liver and then sparkling water. Because I think sparkling water.
What have you got against sparkling water?
It's not that. I mean, I don't like it. There are worse things to drink, obviously. There's drinks that I like less, but I think it's the fact that it's so close to something that's perfect. It's like having fresh water on the island would be amazing. For me to have all this pure water, but it's all sparkling, would be like, it's so close to just being great. And that's something that comes up quite often. It's sort of things that are almost worse than just only having, like, I don't know, I can't think of a drink the food and drink ones are always difficult because I'm not that fussy. But just like a horrible drink, but yeah, I think fizzy water would be bad. I think song and film, I picked Love Actually and
which I still haven't seen, so yeah.
Well, I don't recommend it.
Okay.
And the song was, I think, More Than Words by Extreme.
Oh yeah, dreadful.
Yeah, I can't stand that song. And it's something
it's not
about
on the radio that often now, but it used to be, like the early 90s, it was on a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for that one, it's because, firstly, I hate that the band singing it are called Extreme when they're singing that. Like, it's the least extreme music. And also, it sounds like it's about to resolve and finish about 8 times throughout the song. So you kind of think, it started again. Like, it's a real tease. So, and then the animal, I think, was just leeches, I think. Because
have you had any direct contact with leeches, or is it the thought of them?
Yeah, no, both really. But I have had contact with them when I was doing the typical like middle-class white man thing of going on a gap year to India when I was 18, and we were walking through the jungle, and someone went, "Oh, guys, I think there's leeches around." I just looked down, my feet were just covered in them, and like trying to get them off. You're supposed to pour salt on them or burn them off or something, but we're just trying to pull them off. But they're these stretchy, slippery things you can't grab hold of, and you don't even want to touch them. But even thinking about it, I mean, this is like, what, 20 years ago, more, and
so you decided not to go with the African Queen as your movie, because there's a classic leeches scene in that.
I don't think I've seen it.
It's an old film.
Okay.
But I think Humphrey Bogart won an Oscar for it. It may even be his only Oscar, I don't know. But there's a leeches scene in that's made me squeamish about leeches.
They weren't like big fat ones. They were like little thin ones.
Right, not proper Hollywood. I mean, the Hollywood ones are the size of like slugs, but no, these are little tiny things.
I don't know, maybe if we'd left them on for longer, they would have inflated. Because I think they do fill up, don't they? But they're horrendous, and you could sort of see them on the leaves, like sort of reaching out for you like that. They're like, oh man, it was just awful. So yeah, that was my animal. I think dealing with those on a day-to-day basis would be horrendous. Yeah. Now
you're not on an island right now. Where are you right now?
I live in southeast London, so
whereabouts?
Close to Crystal Palace, so sort of Sydenham. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And did you grow up there?
No, I'm from Leicester originally. So yeah, grew up in Leicester and then moved to Brighton. Went to uni in Brighton, stayed there for about 7 or 8 years.
There's a couple of good towns, Leicester and Brighton. Leicester, I didn't live in Leicester. I lived in Nottingham, but I was on Century Radio, which covered Leicester, Derby, and Nottingham. So I spent a bit of time in Leicester. In fact, I bought a car in Leicester.
Was it reliable?
It was a well. It was. I was lucky enough to buy an actual new car.
Okay.
In Leicester from the local Mazda dealer, Robertson's Mazda, and it was a great car. It was it was a really good MX-5. My first sports
sporty.
car.
Yeah.
In fact, I bought two of them off him in the end. The second one I bought after I'd moved to Bournemouth, and I bought another. I traded that one and bought another one off him.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good town, Leicester. I like it.
Yeah, it was weird. Like when I was growing up, everyone used to a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, I can't wait to get out of Leicester. It's really boring." And I just didn't really have any experience of any other town. So I kind of thought, well, it's all right. It's fine. And I I had my friends and I thought it was okay. And then I went to Brighton and I was like, oh, right. I get it. And it was just so much more me. And I kind of, in Leicester, I just thought, oh, I don't really like going to clubs. I don't, because it was, this is like, up to about the year 2000. So I'm sure now it's vastly different. So if anyone's listening in from Leicester, like this
switching
is not,
off now from Leicester. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not, this is not current information. Yeah. So I go back and visit my mum because she still lives there. But when I went to Brighton, it was like, oh, I can go to a club and I don't have to wear smart shoes and smart clothes that I don't like. And, and they play they don't just play sort of cheesy commercial pop and stuff, which I didn't like, and it was just, so that was a real awakening, I think. So I don't know, I think Leicester's probably completely different now. I have no idea what it's like these days.
It's been a long time since I lived there too, but
yeah,
I remember being a good town. The only problem with it is Gary Lineker comes from there, which lets the town down badly.
You're not a Gary Lineker fan. I mean, even though I haven't lived there for years, that's quite sacrilegious for me.
Yeah, I realise that, yes.
Yeah.
But no, he does nothing for me.
Okay.
No, I suppose I'm angry that he gets paid so much money, and and when and in his off time he sells kids junk food. But he's I don't know. I don't get why he's paid so much money. I don't think he's that good. I think he's very competent at what he does, but I don't think he excels. But anyway,
I mean, I know nothing about football, so you could show me anyone talking about football, and I'd probably think it was fun. I have no sort of scale on which to gauge him. I just think he's like friendly Gary Lineker, who So I don't know. I mean, the one that I mean, having said that, if I listen to people. The one, like those radio shows I never understand, when it's just like members of the public calling in to talk about football.
Yes.
And I don't, and it's like, I don't care what you think. Like, why are you telling me, why are you letting like Timothy and Durham tell me the problem with Arsenal's defensive lineup? Like, who is he?
He's a postman. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I haven't got a clue who you are. Like, I find the same thing I was just talking, because my brother's staying tonight, and Steve Lamack is always on Six Music when we're having our dinner, and he always does this thing where he talks to a listener about a gig they went to for ages, and I'm thinking, I don't know this person. There's nothing interesting about this. Why are you letting them talk for so long? And then and he's always like, oh yeah, I remember seeing them at the Southampton Corn Exchange. Oh yeah, great venue. It was 1987. I've still got the T-shirt actually. And I was just thinking, like, who is? So it's not. There's something about members of the public just talking about stuff that they're not particularly experts in, but especially the football ones when it's like really opinionated, like, oh yeah, they need to get rid of. He's been on for ages. Just sort that out. It's like,
and it costs too much money. They should have bought him instead. Yeah, and all that. Yeah.
You're not a football manager. I'm sure it's more complicated than this, Tim.
Yeah, but to have a go at Six Music though, I mean, some of the people on there, a lot of the people on there, are actually musicians. And, when they start talking about bands and music and records and albums and everything, fine. And really, Gary Lineker, an ex-football player, he's allowed to have an opinion about football. But there are a lot of presenters on there that couldn't tune a guitar. And they'll start talking about a great guitar solo, or they'll, and they've got no musical experience, but they'll talk as if they're an expert. And people will believe that they are an expert when they've only pushed a button to make the song start. They haven't actually, they couldn't play the song or sing the song or get on the stage and do it. But, you know, a lot of them are musicians, I know. But who was it? I was at a Radio Academy event. I forget who it was now as a Six music presenter. And they'd only just heard of skiffle. And I know skiffle as the, you know, if you know the history of British music, you know, the Beatles started out in a skiffle. They were a skiffle band. And so many bands, you know, that became, you know, a big deal or led what became the British invasion into America, Skiffle and Lonnie Donegan and all that. And this particular Six music presenter that I won't name had never even heard of skiffle. And I thought, and you're giving your opinion about music all the time. I've heard you. And you didn't even know what skiffle was. You know, that annoys me about that kind of thing. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I suppose it depends like how focused in a genre. I mean, if it's like a drum and bass presenter who's never heard of skiffle, then I don't mind.
Oh no, that's fine. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Trust me, it wasn't. It was somebody who should have known. Yeah. Well, as a matter of interest, have you heard of skiffle, or am I just?
I've heard of skiffle. Yeah.
Well, okay, fine. I was wondering whether I was just too on the inside or something. Okay, so the three people that you have stranded on the desert island that you don't want to be with, have any of your guests come up with any that have just shocked you, apart from the Beatles? Well, I mean, the Beatles is the music, but the actual people that they choose to not be, the last people on Earth they want to be on a desert island with, has a name come up and you've gone, no, I'd love to be on a desert island with that person?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, what surprises me, I mean, because there are the odd things that sometimes you hear and you just think, well, that's a bit weird. The person who's come out by far the most, okay, so the person who's been picked the second most times is Piers Morgan, right? And across all the episodes.
Now, that's understandable.
He's got 8. Coming in at nearly double with 13, so not nearly double, but, you know, a good chunk above that is Bear Grylls. And, like, I don't really have... Yeah, I see. I didn't know that he was so hated. Like, I don't really care about him either way. I never watch his programs, but I don't really... I mean, I suppose I have slightly more negative feelings than positive ones, but, you know, we're talking like it's not heavily tipped towards the negative. And he comes up again and again, and I find that really surprising, just because, I don't know, I must be so out of the loop, but people really can't stand him. Plus, you know, obviously he's a survival expert, so he's pretty good. Even if you find him annoying, he's really useful to have on the island. So people hate him.
Dom Jolly. I interviewed Dom Jolly on this show. Let me just drop Dom Jolly's name in there on this show. I mean, you've had some stellar guests, but anyway,
we've had Dom Jolly as well.
You've had Dom Jolly. Did he mention Bear Grylls?
Yeah, because he...
he told me this story. He was on some show with him, and they were starving to death or something, and Bear Grylls hardly ever showed up, and they called him Barely There Grylls. Did he mention that?
Yeah. I don't think he mentioned that. I think he said that he thought he disliked him less because at the beginning he said how he actually quite liked Trigger Happy TV. So he thought, oh, maybe I misjudged you a bit.
But he did actually pick Bear Grylls as one of his people.
I don't think he did. No, I think.
But he did mention Bear Grylls along the way. Okay, fine.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. So the thing is, I've got this incredible spreadsheet, but I'm very bad at working spreadsheets. So I'm just trying to filter through, and I can tell you.
I would put spreadsheets as one of the things I wouldn't have on a desert island. I cannot stand spreadsheets.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why a really kind listener has sorted it out for us. But unfortunately, I'm really bad at working it. So it is a really good resource, but I'm not very good at it. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Dom Jolly. It's okay. So he picked Cliff Richard,
right?
Donald Trump,
and
Jamie Oliver, but as a figurehead of celebrity chefs.
Jamie, well, all celebrity chefs, but I get Jamie Oliver because Jamie Oliver really annoys me. And the reason why he annoys me is because I blame him for the childhood obesity epidemic. And I blame him personally, yes, because when I was a kid at school, I was a skinny kid at school. And I was a skinny kid because my mother was a terrible cook. I mean, awful. Her idea of an evening meal would be corned beef that's been under 2 plates in the fridge for a week so it's cold, it's fridge temperature, so 4 degrees Celsius, on a plate with some brown chips, and the chips were brown because she'd recycled we only ever bought cooking oil once, and I think that was probably back in the 1960s, and we just kept using the same oil right up until the 80s. And so the chips were brown, and that was considered a meal. So I was skinny because my mother's cooking was terrible. Now, what was also terrible was the meals at school were awful. So we didn't eat that much. So there weren't that many fat kids back then. I left school in 1980. And now most of the kids are fat. You had one fat kid in every class. But now most of the kids are fat. And they're fat because Jamie Oliver showed young mums how to make tasty food. And then he doubled down by then showing the schools how to make tasty food, and now all the kids are fat. So I would put Jamie Oliver as one of the people I wouldn't want to be with, just because he's created this generation of fat kids.
Okay, yeah, so counter to his doctrine. Yeah,
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think I go hot and cold with him, really. I sort of, I remember when he came out as the Naked Chef, and it was really exciting, and then he was just everywhere, and he was really annoying. Then I kind of think, oh, well, you're trying your best, and then, yeah, I can't decide, really. I think,
well, he opened
he's been
this
on a
chain,
few
didn't he?
times.
Jamie's Italian, and Jamie's not Italian. If he'd opened one that was like, pie and mash or something that, it fits how he sounds, but he doesn't sound Italian. How you can open a chain of Italian restaurants, and then did he shut the whole chain down, or just the big ones in London, and loads of people were out of work, and he was still a millionaire? Yeah.
Yeah. I think,
So,
yeah.
I don't know. I could have told him that was a silly idea. If you open a chain of Italian restaurants, at least be Italian,
Yeah.
But or don't say, and then no one knows. But if Jamie Oliver's Italian, no, he's not.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? I think he sort of, because I think he did an Italian cookbook and stuff, didn't he? So maybe it's just sort of that did better than he thought, and then he thought, oh, I can capitalize on this maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think people like Jamie come up quite a lot because, we were saying before, I think there's like a lot of people, because like Donald Trump has obviously come up a lot.
Yeah.
But not as much as, like if we're all honest, it'd probably come up the most out of everybody, So I think a lot of the time people think, oh, well, he's probably been picked the most, so I better not do him. So Donald Trump's, I think, in like 4th place or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's level with train people, and I don't even know what that is. I think just people have just got annoyed with other people on trains. So I think it's like, I think often people start off thinking, oh, who do I hate? So now you go, oh, Vladimir Putin, yeah, he can go on the island. And then you kind of think, although would he be the most annoying person? Would he be more annoying than that ticket inspector who kicked me off for not having quite the right ticket? Or, when I was coming home late and I was tired and, spilt food all over myself or something like that. You think maybe that kind of real like pedant would be really annoying on a desert island. So I think it's like, it's interesting to see who people pick, like the traits that actually to live with long term would really get on people's nerves, rather than just being like a megalomaniac dictator.
Yeah. Because for all you know, if you ended up spending time where survival is the key, maybe Putin might be the guy you want. A ruthless dictator who can kill one of the other people for food, which you wouldn't be able to do yourself.
No, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. It would be different rules.
Yeah,
Did
I
Bill
think with
Gates
him,
ever,
he probably sort of.
Bill Gates ever come up?
Has Bill Gates come up? Let me have a look. I'm gonna have to try and do a search, so it might not be perfect. We do get a lot of the sort of like Elon Musk kind of what's his name, Jeff Bezos kind of people.
Yeah.
So I think there's that type gets on people's nerves a lot. So
Yeah.
let me see if I can find it. Let me see. I can't. No, I don't know. Apparently not. But I could just be using the spreadsheet wrong.
Okay. What about weather forecasters? They ever come up?
Not so much. No, I think just. I suppose because weather forecasters, we rely on them and they get things wrong. But I think they're.
But they
I think
never
it's-
apologise. And they come on with all their. I mean, really, if you were to ask me what the weather's going to be like, I'd say I think it's going to rain tomorrow and it might be chilly, or I might say it's going to be sunny but not that warm. I'm done in about 3 seconds. How they managed to drag it all out with the maps and the wind and the symbols and the isobars and what they're doing is they're dressing it up as science, and weather forecasting isn't science. They're guessing. They're fortune tellers. That's what they are. They should be put in the same category as astrologers, who are usually wrong. And we all know it's just a bit of fun and it doesn't really matter. But they put it across as if it's serious. I'm surprised they haven't come up.
I used to get really annoyed with Thomas Schaffernacker. He used to annoy me because I think he felt. I just got the vibe that he thought he was a bit rock and roll, like he was bringing a bit of sort of like edgy rock and roll to the weather. And I was like, just tell me the weather. Now I just look at an app on my phone, so I sort of forget about because I've got
what everybody
really bad
does, and then you
attention.
glaze over when it comes on the TV. You've no idea what they've just been saying.
Well, I've got quite a short attention span, so often, like when they're saying it, I'm like, shit. Or like, I don't like it when they do it. Sometimes they start off and they go, well, here's what's happening in like Europe. And I'm like, no, I know, but like, just tell me. Like, I mean, I just need to know what kind of shoes to wear today, or like if I need a jacket. So I don't know. I don't mind how hot it is in Spain right now. Like I can look that up. But I always thought Thomas Schaffernacker was a little bit like cocky, but I don't even know if he's around still. I really don't have my finger on the pulse of popular culture.
One last one then, just to check for the spreadsheet, and we'll move on. Are cyclists on there?
I think some people have picked cyclists.
Yeah, surely.
Let me have another look.
Or what they call them, mammals. Was it men in lycra or whatever? They might have been that particular kind of.
Okay, so I have 3 people have picked cyclists.
Okay,
hang on.
yeah.
So that was Lucy Beresford picked them. Also, hang on, sorry. This is my poor spreadsheet wrangling. Where is it? That was 79. Richard Herring picked cyclist as well.
Yeah, so two funny people, I've gone with cyclists.
And Helen Bauer as well. So there you go.
Who's Helen? Where do we know Helen from?
Helen's a comedian.
Another. So all three cyclist haters were comedians.
Yeah, which is weird because normally I would think that comedians, if it's in very broad strokes, tend to be fairly sort of conscious, kind of, I don't know, like a lot of them, a bit more left-leaning, politically sort of conscious, and you think cycling would kind of go with that.
You would think.
But I don't know.
You would
but
think.
You have to listen. We'd have to listen to their reasoning. I can't remember all the reasoning now. So it could be something quite. I mean, some people pick people that they like to be stuck on an island with. Like we have people picking like family members or their best mates or girlfriends or people because they just think. Because they think, that'd be bad because then it might make it awkward, or I'd have to watch them dying, and I'd have to protect it. So there's sort of all kinds of psychologies go into it. So sometimes, I mean, we do have people just picking family members that they genuinely don't like. Like there's been a few where people have just said, "Oh, my dad," because he's a dick, and then they're always the ones who are like, well, okay, this is going to be good, and they're the really interesting ones. I think when it's a family member, you're always like, okay,
yeah, because they've got a bit of a story, and it's going to be a unique one. Yeah, it's not going to be like, what's the deal with these kind of people? Why do they do that? Why do weathermen do that? Whatever. It's going to be something real and personal.
Yeah, but I think that's the nice thing about it is like sometimes I sort of joke with people quite a lot that maybe this will be like a cathartic experience. And sometimes they start off going, actually, this is really, I'm really getting a lot off my chest. And then there's like a bit where it can go slightly past that. And then they just get really angry. And by the end, I'm like, you feeling better or are you more angry? So we try and make it lighthearted. I think that's the thing. Like, some days I'm like, what am I putting out into the world? The podcast where we just rant about people and things we hate. But I think hopefully at the end of it, it's sort of broadly a positive thing, and that it makes people laugh, and I don't think anyone's too sort of like I don't know, too bitter or angry about stuff really.
I think one of the genius things that your podcast does is because it is essentially it's a one-to-one interview with a famous, usually a famous guest, and the pressure usually in that situation is on the interviewer, because they have to do their research and work out how it's going to go, and they have to decide which way to take the conversation to get whatever it is they want out of it. But with your one, you've put the pressure on the guest. The guest has to do you do much prep before you have it on your side of things? Or do you just say, okay, we've got, I don't know, Stephen K. Amos on, one of your guests. Do you just let them go? How much do you prep for the thing?
Well, sometimes I do ask them if they can send on their choices before.
Yes.
But that only happens about 50% of the time, because often they sort of just pick them on the day or keep their cards close to their chest. And the main reason I ask them about that is just because there's often, especially with films, I'm really bad at watching films. So quite a lot of the time I haven't seen the film that they've picked, or it might be a song that's like, if it's anything that's a bit too recent in the charts, I might not know it. So it's often I kind of need to just double check which one they're talking about. The people I generally get, occasionally they'll mention someone and it's like a made in Chelsea or only wears Essex sort of person, which I'm not that aware of, but you can sort of blag your way through those kind of things. But so research wise, I don't have to do an awful lot, which is quite nice. I think, for my part, having that balance is really nice, because I think, one of the things when I used to produce live shows, I always found it really frustrating because, I'm a talkative person. I like to get on with people. I like to chat to whoever's in the room. And often, when I would be the producer, I'd kind of go and meet the funny comedian that I'd seen on telly, and I'd really want to talk to them, have a nice chat while I'm making them a coffee or whatever. And then I'd go into the studio and I had to be sort of seen and not heard. And, you're kind of thinking, oh, I want to say that. Or like, I'd chime in, they'd say something and they'd leave a pause. And I'm like, oh no, I can't, and it was really frustrating. So now it's so satisfying. Like I'm in the room with them, and I can actually we can spar and have a nice time and just sort of make each other laugh, which is really satisfying, and it's that you've got that sort of slightly level footing because it's independent as well. I'm not sort of worried about, what my paymasters might say, or sort of, I feel like you can just be a bit more on a level playing field, and kind of, I'm not thinking, oh, he's going on a bit, I've got to get to the ad break and all this sort of stuff. I don't have all those little junctions to worry about. And it does make it more equal, I think. And there's some of them I come out of and I'm like, God, I genuinely would really like to just hang out with this person now, I think it's, technically it is an interview, I suppose. And sometimes you do get some like really good stories out of them. But I'm not really like probing into sort of their childhood too much. If it's relevant stuff, I might probe a little bit or sort of ask why one thing is. But there's other podcasts that have like a theme, but they actually use it to really sort of delve into their past in a sort of more autobiographical sense. But we're fairly shallow, I think. we don't probe too deep unless it sort of comes up, I think.
And you mentioned COVID made you change, so you had to do it remotely. What difference did that make to you?
I'd only done 3 in real life. And to be honest, it was much easier because, I've worked from home for 2 years now. So in that respect, it's a lot easier. When I was trying to do it at work, it's sort of a bit cheeky to record them at a workplace anyway, because it's not the output of the station. So it's a little bit sort of bending the rules anyway. And our building has multiple radio stations in there. So there was always competition for a studio. And when my friend started it and he used to record, there weren't nearly as many radio stations. They kept launching more and more. So it's harder and harder to get a studio. And I just remember thinking, God, this is going to be really tricky, because I think there was one guest turned up, and like the studio that I'd booked had been used by someone else. And we ended up in this tiny recording booth that was basically like a desk. I had to perch on a desk and she was sat in a chair. So I was about 2 feet higher than her. And I was thinking, oh, this is, so the nice thing is just, you can sort of set your own terms a bit more. It's nice and comfy, and it's like, right, we don't have to go out of our way. I know that the setup will always be the same. From a sort of, geeky sound point of view, it's more frustrating because as a radio producer, I'm a bit more like particular about sound quality. So, sometimes you kind of, they come on the camera and it's like because they're in a really echoey room with no soft furnishings and they haven't
And they're
got
using the
headphones.
computer's mic.
Yeah, so that kind of thing. I mean, I am today, so I have
Oh,
to apologise for all that. Normally
It
I
sounds
record
all right,
on the,
though. It does sound all right.
yeah, because
Yeah.
of good sound deadening in my room, you see.
Yeah.
But yeah, normally I record on a separate mic and put the SD card in and rip it off, so that's why I don't have a plug-in system. But yeah, so sometimes I wince a bit when I'm like, oh no, is that your setup? Oh, this is good. I mean, I can see you've got a lovely, nice studio. I mean, that would be the dream if every guest came on in that sort of like sound deadened box. But I mean, I think again though, I mean, people are used to it now. I think with podcasts, especially over the last couple of years, where
I think they are. Yeah.
people are always recording remotely, and I think it's like one of those things. Like if you start off watching a black and white film, with it, you don't think of it. You don't even notice the absence of color within 2 minutes. And I think as long as they're not too wildly different sound qualities, I think people are just, if the content's funny and it's all right, I think people don't worry. So yeah, I think doing it remotely seems to be the way to go. And I think a lot of comedians quite like it as well because, they do funny hours and it means they don't have to travel around a lot and they can just sort of wake up and do it. And we have done a couple of live ones and we'd like to
The
do
Stephen
more of
K.
those.
Amos one I mentioned was a live one. That was a lovely
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. He was really good. And we'd done a Fern Brady. She came on the night before. And we had Lou Sanders booked as a live one, but then at the time it was just COVID was flaring up again. And it was sort of, I think it was set for February. And at the time when we were trying to sell tickets, it was just that point where, the Omicron had just started and it was just, I mean, in the end, by the time it would have been live, it would have been all right. But when you're selling tickets, you have to kind of think, well, I see events being cancelled left, right, left, right, centre. So yeah, we had to cancel that one. But it's something we'd like to do more of in the future, doing some more live shows and do them regularly, or have some kind of what do you call it? I can't think of the word now, but when you do like one a month in a monthly venue in the same place every month, like a residency.
Like a residency,
like that.
yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Or little festivals and stuff like that. So yeah, we have got plans to do it, but yeah, in the meantime, just gonna keep plugging along anyway. So just.
And you're selling tickets for those. Do they make money? The live ones? Do you come out with something, or does it break even? What's the deal there?
The last ones, I mean, we weren't really making much money on the last ones just because, it was, I mean, with COVID and stuff, it was so tricky because the last ones were sort of in the run up to Christmas. And I think, people were still so sort of wary about stuff. And, we didn't know if Christmas would even be cancelled again. And so I think it was a bit of, in this climate, it's quite hard to sort of decide from those couple of shows we did whether from that we could go on, it's hard to use those as a basis for future shows. I think it's almost like, okay, well, clean slate, start again, and use that as a sort of a trial. I mean, James had done one years ago with Tom Allen, which went really well, and that was sort of before the pandemic and stuff. And and he had always planned to do more. I think he did a couple of other live ones. So they can work nicely, and it's sort of a good way of like you can pay the guest, make a bit of money as well.
You pay the guest. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, for the live ones we would, yeah. So
yeah. And does the podcast generally make money? Because you've got a big following you could tap into.
Yeah, it makes a bit. I mean, we get adverts in the podcast and stuff, so we make a bit of that. We put everything back into the podcast, really. So if we make money, sort of sometimes put it towards guests, or we recently hired an editor, which is brilliant. Because me and James both got 2 kids, both got full-time jobs. So, not having to sort of one night a week just go, oh, right, I've got to edit that thing now. That's a big weight. And you end up sort of doing that thing of going, oh, I'm going to do it in the week this time. And it gets to Sunday evening. It's like when you're home working, oh, God, it's Sunday evening. Got to put the kids to bed and do this thing. I'm tired. I can't be bothered. So, yeah, that's sort of the main thing that has allowed us to do is having an editor makes it feel it's a lot easier, a lot less pressure, and I feel quite it feels quite grown up. like wow, I've got an editor, great. Here's all the stuff, Chris, and he puts and he's I've been working in audio for like 15 years, and he's much better than I am. I don't so it's also good that he's a really good editor as well. So
I think the problem is as well, if you edit your own, you get so fussy and so finicky about, you go beyond the point of where it matters. You're taking breaths out and little repetitions and things, and where someone else hearing it, they're hearing it like a listener would hear it almost. It's almost better not to edit your own stuff sometimes. I mean, there's obviously bits when you know how you want it edited, and you can tell a good editor how to do that. And the rest of it, just leave it to their judgment, apart from just a basic guideline. Yeah, I get that.
I mean, Chris, our editor, is fantastic like that, and sort of everything I mean, I think right at the beginning I gave him some very broad pointers, and then listened to a couple, and I was like, bit more like this, and it was just done, and I've never said anything since, because it's just so on the money. So and it's just, I think it's one of those things, like, it's one sort of thing to pay for that makes such a difference to our lives, and how you approach, because you want to sort of, I think when you do a podcast, that's why so many people start up a podcast and don't carry on, because they don't realize, like, it's relentless, and you need to find guests, and as soon as you've kind of done a run, you need to be looking ahead for the next one. And it is a job in itself. If you can put the editing on, I mean, now we can just focus on guests and recording, and that's that, and that bit's done, and it just gives you more energy to do the bit of sort of getting guests, because I think we've had some fantastic guests, and I think
you have. How do you get them then?
Well, I was going to say, one of the things when people ask me, I say, well, for every guest we get, we send about 40 emails.
It's a numbers game. It's like getting a job.
And on top of that, even the ones that you do get, often it's like, I'll send out a load of emails to people who wait a bit of time. I'll send out a few more, like, to the same people. I think often agents, they'll go, well, I don't know who this podcast is, I'll see how serious they are. It's like when you come back to them, go, okay, just checking in. So there's a lot of like, right, who didn't get back to me? Who said, or like, we're really persistent. If they say, oh, they're busy, maybe next year, I'm like, I'm going to be emailing you next year.
It's timing though, isn't it? A lot of the time. If like, for instance, if an actor's about to go on tour, or someone's got a book out or an album out or something, then they're more likely. And if you catch them at a time when they're busy creating something, they don't want to know about talking about stuff. But once they've done it and they've got to go out and sell it, then a lot of it is timing. I know that's how. Well, let me drop another name just for the hell of it. But I got John Cleese once, not on this show, on a different. It was a podcast I did for Talkers Radio, the website in America, in New York. They now are on podcast radio. Talkers have a podcast on there. But anyway, he wanted me to do a podcast for his website in New York, but he wanted it to be based in Britain, which is obviously where I lived. So I decided, well, I'll just talk to people who've got a connection with both countries. So I talked to people who were either born here and lived there, or lived there and were, so I did like Paul Gambaccini and people like that. But the first one I tried was John Cleese. And I got him. And I'm like, how the hell did I get John Cleese as the first guest? And he was about to go on a tour of America with Eric Idle. And he wanted to promote the tour in America. And when I said, no, this is a podcast, it's for America, he was like, they're in, So a lot of it is the timing of it. And that's how I got him. I was very, very lucky with that. And spent an hour and a half with him in his office in Chelsea. It was mind-blowing. But,
but
it's just a timing thing. And I think Dom Jolly was the same thing. I didn't book him. Jerry from Podcast Radio booked Dom Jolly, and it was because he had a podcast out, and he wanted to promote that. And it was at the time when he was in the promotion phase of that. I bet if he was in the phase where he was actually writing it and doing it, he wouldn't have wanted to know. And that may have only been weeks before, but you just get them because it's the timing of it, isn't it? Yeah,
and I think with us as well, I think I mean, this works both ways really. I think there's some of the big ones we've got have just really liked the sound of like doing it, like
I think, like, well, that's cool.
Yeah,
They like
we had
the
Skin from
concept of
Skunk
it.
Anansie and Tom Kerridge, and they've both gone like, oh, like I heard the name, I just really wanted to have a go at this. Like Tom Kerridge is the first person we've had that's done Desert Island Discs and Desert Island Dicks, so that's that's
Wow.
good. But
Wow.
I mean, it works the same. It works in the other way though, because I think some people hear it and they're like, "Oh no, you know, that's a bit negative. I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to be associated with that," or like, "Oh, I think it would put me in an awkward position," or you know. So yeah, some people kind of think, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a bit of fun." Some people kind of think, "Oh no, yeah, I can't touch that." So yeah, it's a sort of double-edged sword, really. But it does help, I think.
And what podcasts inspire you? Are you a podcast listener and podcast fan?
Yeah, I am now. No, sorry, I said that in a weird intonation. I am now, though. I trouble is because I work from home and
Yeah.
I've got two kids, and I
So
find
there's
that
no
I'll listen.
commute. Yeah.
There's no commute. I used to listen like 2 or 3 a day, and now one is like lasts me about a week because it's sort of like when I'm walking 10 minutes to like after I've dropped them off at school or like on the way to the gym or something, and like tiny little pockets of time, and I'm like, how am I still listening to this one? You know, and I think, you know, obviously you can just sit at home listening, but it's like, you know, if I'm washing the dishes, it's quite good and stuff. So I do really like podcasts, but yeah, my listening of them is really bad now. I mean, I listen to a lot of the sort of ones that loads of people listen to, like Adam Buxton and Richard Herring
Yeah.
and ones
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of sort of ones that are a bit boring, like that. You know, like I've got this. I find it a bit embarrassing, but I'm really into cars. But so there's like a couple of motoring ones I listen to, but I sort of more and more I just sort of I'm like, what am I listening to? I'm finding it really boring now. And then there's one like James and I once thought about doing a fitness podcast, even though neither of us are particularly fit, but we enjoy going to the gym, and we thought maybe it could be a podcast for people who want to get fit but don't really know anything like us, rather than like if there's ever like a health thing, it's by people who know everything and they do it all the time. And I was like, I want to listen to like average blokes who are like, look, you're trying your best, but occasionally we might have a cigarette or, you know, or drink too much. And so we thought about doing that. And there's like researching it, there's this Australian podcast called Fitbet that I started listening to that actually I got quite into and ended up listening to loads of them because it's like there are two overweight comedians who bet each other $1,000 who could get under a certain weight first. But yeah, it's just that really nice supportive thing, and they're just sort of telling you, you know, they're just really honest and kind, and just it sort of ends up being like a bit of a self-help thing, but by just sort of like listening to your mates do it. And so I quite like that. There's one called Imaginary Advice, which is by a poet called Ross Sutherland, I always recommend, which is really inventive. Again, you know what, I haven't listened in ages, but he's like a poet and a writer, and like one episode might be 15 minutes long, like a really silly thing that he's written. It's really funny. And then one that might be like a 2-part sort of spoof horror thing, or sometimes they're quite serious and gritty, and that was always really surprising and interesting. So I like those kind of things as well. But yeah, that's one thing. Like since working from home, my consumption has slowed so much, which is a real shame because, you know, I do love them and I love the format, but yeah, I just need to carve out more time.
I used to commute half an hour each way to no, a little bit more than that, probably about 38 minutes from. I live in Hitchin in Hertfordshire, and I used to commute in and get off at Blackfriars. So that's a good old run. You can get maybe up to, you know, with my walk to the station and my walk from Blackfriars to the radio station, it used to be about 40 minutes each way. And that was about right. And now, because I've worked from home since they fired me, but which coincides with the pandemic, now it is like, it's literally like 15 minutes to Tesco and back. My walk, and that's all I get. So I have to be more fussy now. In fact, I've changed the app. I used to use the Apple. I've got an iPhone, but I used to use the Apple podcasting app. But it just got so confusing, and I got fed up with it. And now I use the Google app, and I prefer that now. Because it doesn't download them. It just, you put the ones you subscribe to in, and it brings up when there's a new episode. And when you listen to it, it streams it. But if you want to download it, you can click it and download it. I don't remember it being that easy to do that on the Apple one. So I'm using Google through Apple.
Confusing. Yeah, I always mean, because I'm constantly getting annoyed at the one on my iPhone, but I never bother to update it or find a better one. So I'll give it a go.
Try the Google podcasting app, and
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
put in the ones you want to subscribe to, and it shows you when there's a new episode. And if you want to hear it, you just play it, and it streams it rather than downloads it. But if you do want to download it, you can, like if you're going on a trip or something, and you don't want to use too much data, you can go, oh yeah, I'll have that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and it downloads them all, and then you can listen to them. That
okay.
way.
Yeah,
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 I like it. It
yeah,
seems just really simple and really easy.
yeah, yeah.
But
I was thinking actually the other one, because I do sometimes listen on Spotify as well.
you
And there's
do?
one that,
Okay.
yeah, like there's one called Heavyweight, which I like, which is an American one, and that's only on Spotify now. So I end up sometimes I do forget that it's only on, and then occasionally I'm like, oh wait, that's the one I used to listen to as well. Great, there's all these episodes over here. So I quite like. Oh, the other one, Poppy Hillstead has entered the chat. That's a really funny one. I really
Really?
like that.
And that is it. What is that, a bit like an Adam Buxton one as well, like a one-to-one kind of thing?
No, it's so what she does, she's a comedian. She used to be one of the people on the Gossip Mongers podcast, but
Right.
now she just does her own one. She goes into different chat rooms. So she goes, this week I'm exploring this topic, and then she goes in and has ridiculous conversations with people in chat rooms, and she's naturally just really funny. Then she gets the transcripts, and then she gets people to sort of act out the conversations with her, and she reproduces them, and they're really bizarre and funny, and it's beautifully produced as well. Like, it's really nice, and it's got some really quirky music that a friend makes and stuff. And yeah, like when I first I think I started listening actually because she was a guest on our show, and I started listening, just binged them all in about a day, the whole series, because I loved it so much, and that's a really good one. It's just really creative, and just, I mean, it must take ages to do it. You listen as a producer and you just think, oh man, I mean, that's something you want a team to help you do, because that's a full thing, So
Yeah.
that's a good one though.
So
I actually need to dip
next?
into that again.
What's next for Desert Island Dicks?
Well, I think, yeah, we just want to sort of carry on and sort of maintain some momentum. These days, we started doing them in series because it was just, sort of getting just kind of relentless, and it felt that you end up sort of going, oh, we need someone for this week. We'll take anyone, and it's kind of hard. So I thought we needed to take a bit of a step back and just sort of be a bit more, plan things out a bit, and having series helps us with that. I know it's sort of a bit annoying with when your favorite podcast is sort of coming out every week, and then suddenly you have to wait a few weeks or a couple of months, whatever. But I think it's helped us sort of, just sort of stream the process a bit better in a way that works for us better. And then, yeah, as I said, trying to get some more live things going on, get some more interaction with listeners, and yeah, maybe sort of things like festivals, like get into some festival bills that I think would be really fun, and just have a bit more of that live atmosphere. Because I really enjoyed it when we did it. It was a really different ball game, I think, doing it live. But it was really nice just having the audience there and having a bit of interaction and stuff. And I mean, it's more nerve-wracking for me, obviously. It's much less comfortable, but I was saying to them, it's a bit like they call it type 2 fun. It's like, at the time it's something you should do. It's not that fun until afterwards. And then you're like, okay, that was really fun. And then you're doing it again tomorrow, and you're like, oh God, okay, all right,
You've been dreading it for 3 weeks, and then it happens, and then afterwards it's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah.
And then, the ultimate thing, I don't know. I mean, it'd be great if one day it wasn't. I mean, we love it being independent. It'd be nice one day if we were picked up by like a big
Like a
company.
Spotify, get the old Joe Rogan money kind of thing. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would obviously be lovely. Like if I could do this for a living, that would be my ideal. Because there's still a sort of frustrated radio presenter / show off inside of me. So that would be nice. Me and James always said, like, we used to sort of like have like late night texting conversations, and we sort of be talking about, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we made loads of money off it and we could like buy each other cars? And then James really likes sort of old Ford Escorts, and I was saying, oh yeah, I'd like find one. And be like, what about this one, James? And I was saying, we have to be careful it's not misconstrued, because sometimes I think because we talk about, oh, one day we'll just make so much money we'll be able to buy each other escorts. I think that can be taken out of context and used against us. But the day I can turn up with a Ford Escort Mexico for James, and and plonk it on his driveway and give it to him, that'd be wonderful. But I think we're quite a way off yet, I think so.
Well, I keep
Yeah.
on plugging away. You never know. The way podcasts are growing and radio is
Yeah.
dying, you might be forced into it. Who knows? I'm not wishing that on you at all. But
Yeah.
you're in the business that's growing and making a living from the business that's going the other way. So
Yeah.
okay. Well, the podcast is called Desert Island Dicks. You get it. Here's that phrase. Wherever you get your podcasts, but you know where
That's
to
right.
get them. Just search for Desert Island Dicks. And Dan Benedictus, thanks very much for being on Podcast Radio.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Good fun.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.